the Joan Quinn Profiles. As an editor for Andy Warhol's Interview, the Los Angeles Herald-Examiner, LA Style, and Detour magazines, Joan covered the social set, the Hollywood hotshots, the international art scene, the mysteries of food, the excitement of travel, and the fabulous world of fashion. Joan continues to find creative people on the cutting edge who make things happen. Here's Joan Quinn.
Hi, I'm Joan Quinn, and welcome to the Joan Quinn Profiles. Waiting to be profiled are filmmaker Deidre Timmons and artist John Buck. Filmmaker Deidre Timmons was born in Wichita, Kansas, and raised in Seattle, Washington. She graduated from Smith with a degree in English literature and a minor in math. She studied acting in New York and screenwriting and filmmaking at the University of Washington. Did you have to learn to write? Because you were a journalist. Why were you taking film writing?
Well, journalism is a very different form of writing. That's a he said, she said, and learning how to write for a specific type of audience in a very specific formula. But when you go to screenwriting, it's a very different part of your brain, and you're really releasing your soul out to the world and crafting the story. And you don't do that with journalism.
Totally different.
Very different. In fact, I think non-journalists sometimes are better writers. So I knew that A Wink and a Smile would draw heavily from my journalism skills.
Because that was documentary.
Absolutely. But I also tried to craft the film so that it would look and feel like a feature film, so that it would make sense later on down the road when I started to make musicals, people would think.
So why did you pick the burlesque school, and how did you name A Wink and a Smile? Let's end. What else should we ask with that long question there? And why was it your first one?
Okay, let me start with why it was my first one.
Okay.
I had been making many shorts and writing many scripts. And then I went to Sundance, and I watched probably 20 films, 3 of which were amazing, and the rest were kind of bad. And I thought, I can do a bad movie. If I can do a bad short, I can do a bad feature length.
Yeah, let's do it, right?
So I came back all fired up, and I told my business partner, we're going to make a feature-length film. No more of these 10-minute jobs. We're going to make a feature-length film. Then the task was to find a subject matter. I did not know that burlesque was having a renaissance in the United States and across the world.
You didn't?
I didn't know that.
Well, who would know that? You're helping bring it back.
I hope so. I hope so, because it's amazing and it's so beautiful. But I met a woman at a party who was studying burlesque at the Academy of Burlesque, and she told me about it, and I was captivated listening to her talk about it. And I knew if it captivated me listening to her talk about it, that I could captivate audiences.
So were you kind of on the outlook when you were going out to parties and always thinking, what can it be?
Oh yeah.
And then it fell in your lap that way?
Oh yeah. That was what I was doing full time, is looking for a subject matter.
Then did you go, it's kind of bizarre, did you go to the Seattle Center of Burlesque, the Academy?
I did. I went to the Academy of Burlesque, and I spoke to the teacher, and I said, I would really like to make a film about burlesque. I don't know what it's going to look like, and I've never made a feature-length movie before, and I have no street cred. There's no reason for you to agree to work with me. And she said, well, thanks, that was impressive.
She believed your honesty. Oh, goodbye. She didn't believe your honesty.
And then I kept going to shows and kept speaking to producers and performers.
Did.
And then I took one of her classes and I performed. And I said, I would really like to cover your 101 class and the journey of becoming a striptease performance artist. And she didn't respond for a long time, and then maybe a month or 2 later, I just received a single email from her that said yes.
Is that right? So would you look at the Academy as getting people, not just women, because you have men in the film too, for porno films or stripper joints or... You know,
those are very different beasts. This burlesque is comedy, it's performance art, it's dance,
it's real,
music,
isn't it?
It's elaborate costuming, it's very theatrical in its storytelling. I would say stripping doesn't contain all of those elements.
I mean, Can burlesque be for family?
Well, you know,
Family entertainment?
I've already been quoted in the press as saying this. I had a 12-year-old daughter at the time I made it. Well, I still have her. And
she's a little older now.
she's never seen any live burlesque, but she's certainly seen the film and the footage and met all of the performers. And when I was practicing for my own routines, I'd say, "Okay, which way are they twirling?"
So you
okay,
did?
Now which way are they twirling? Okay, now which way? You know. So,
Did you take the twirling class? Oh, we're going to get to
I
that.
did,
Okay.
I
First
did.
of all, before we get to the twirling class and what you actually took when you went to 101, what are the differences then between the stripping and the pole dancing and the drag show and the burlesque performer?
Well, I think the burlesque performer is a consummate artist and
Okay.
dedicated to this performance art form, many of them for their entire lives. There are living legends that are in their 80s and they're still performing.
I know.
And they're amazing.
They're still performing?
They're still performing.
Or they're just still
and
here with
They're
us?
still here with us and still performing.
Oh, that's great.
And
Names like
Tourist Satana is still performing.
Betty Rowland?
Who
No.
else is still performing?
Betty Rowland?
Oh, I know you're there. Dixie Evans is not still performing, but she lives in Las Vegas and she's running the Burlesque Hall of Fame. And
Oh.
she's very, very key to the entire rebirth of burlesque. So, yes, they're still
There
out
are.
there. Wild Cherry.
Okay, so tell us then, pole dancing.
Pole dancing. I don't know. I've only taken one class. I don't know a bunch of pole dancers. I think of that as very closely akin to stripping. It's done very much for sexual titillation and maybe not so much for general entertainment purposes.
And a drag show?
A drag show is much closer. I mean,
because you have costumes
yeah.
and makeup
Yeah.
and music.
Yeah. I mean, drag doesn't necessarily involve stripping, as burlesque
Oh.
generally does. Strip teasing, I should say, because in burlesque you don't take everything off. You get mighty close, but you don't take everything off.
And are there different laws that keep you from taking everything off?
There are, and they vary from state to state. They can vary from county to county.
Oh.
They can vary from neighborhood to neighborhood.
So in Washington, is that different from California?
You know, I think it is. I'm not a specialist on the laws of burlesque, but I know I've been to some burlesque in Los Angeles where they're not allowed to take everything off, down to pasties and G-strings.
So is it typical pasties and G-string? Is that what the typical
I think
burlesque?
that's what you aspire to.
Is that what you get down
getting
to?
down to something really, some beautiful set of pasties and some really phenomenal bottom of some sort.
You know, it just reminded me when we were talking about a drag show, Joey Arias, who does a strip, right?
I'm a huge fan of Joey Arias.
He's fantastic.
Yeah.
But he came to Seattle at one time, I guess.
He did, and he just performed in Paris with a big puppet show that he did with Basil Twist.
I saw that. That Twist is the best. I saw him in New York.
Yeah,
that
I saw
puppet
that
show. What's his name?
Basil Twist. Or
Basil Twist.
Basil Twist.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh, it's
wasn't that show
beautiful.
great?
Yeah.
He comes to Seattle. We've shot him performing before. He's just a consummate artist. And yes, he does peel his clothes off slowly.
Very slowly.
And
Lots
he's-
of layers.
So I would say he's definitely burlesque inspired, but he's sort of his own genre with that beautiful voice and his speech, and he's amazing.
He's great.
Yeah.
So here we are.
Here we are.
A wink, a wink and a smile. Where'd the name come from?
That same woman that told me she was a burlesque student that first introduced
she
me to the
did?
whole notion. She was at a party and I said, well, what is it ultimately about? And she said, ultimately, burlesque is about a wink and a smile.
Oh, so that was your thing. So that was your title. Yeah. Then you went to 101, and they do backgrounds. They tell you about the 20s, and they tell you that you have to decide on a name. And when you went there, what name did you decide on?
Well, I was the Duchess Moorhead.
How do you pick your name?
I think that they say that your name is supposed to be sort of your alter ego.
Oh,
your
I see.
drag alter ego.
I see.
So you might try to find something about yourself that defines you. There's a woman named Phoebe Applebottom. I don't know if she's still performing right now, but Applebottom certainly describes a certain part of her physique.
And so then you do your costuming according to your name and the music.
I think
what
in
do
the
you
beginning you're just trying to to become one with the notion of taking your clothes off in front of strangers. In the very beginning, I don't know how refined anybody is, but as you develop and as you grow as a burlesque performer, ultimately you have to have sort of a marketing angle. You know, you have to have either special moves, or you sing in a special way, or a special style of costuming. So yeah, ultimately, if you become a consummate professional in the burlesque world, you do have your specialties.
Makeup?
Well, I've certainly learned a lot about makeup just in the course of making the film, but they wear elaborate makeup. Glitter is a huge component of the makeup. False eyelashes is a huge component. Lips that are ruby red. Wigs that go on forever. Some of these performers will sew 5 or 6 wigs together.
Oh, I see.
I mean, hair forever. And basically exaggerating everything that you own.
I think one of the other things was the music. They talk about picking music for their own show, but the music you used in the film when you started it, it was kind of like New Orleans blues or a French street music. What was your music? How'd you decide on that?
Music is tough. And we didn't have a musical director. I mean, this was a small budget film. So I went to local musicians who played music that was aesthetically complementary to burlesque and the history of burlesque, and who wrote their own music so I could get rights to it.
Oh, I see.
But also, we worked with a band who wrote 10 pieces of music and donated it to the film, basically.
It felt like kind of Follies. Kind of felt really great. It moved it moved your film along really well.
I mean, music was a huge part of this. I think of it as a musical documentary, not just a documentary.
Because you love the musical.
I love the musical.
No wonder. But it stood out so much. Yeah. Before we leave, just tell me, what audience is a wink and a smile?
Okay, so here's the beautiful thing about this film. I think it so far has resonated with a much older audience. I mean, 70s and 80s, because they remember burlesque when they were young.
Yeah.
It's resonating with the gay audience because there are a lot of it's a huge part of the homosexual culture. I mean, there are just many gay people who perform. And it's resonating with mothers who feel like they've sort of disappeared and their sexuality has waned. We have one character in there who really fights for holding on to your sexuality.
She's the oldest one. She's 60 years, 50?
No, 51.
50. That was pretty good because most of the other ones were in their 20s. Most of the other girls in 101, Burlesque 101.
Exactly. But it also appeals to men because of all the nudity. And a surprise audience for me has been teenage girls, and the feminist world has come forward and really fought for this film. And
I think one of the interesting things when we were talking earlier is that they want to use it for gender studies in colleges.
Yeah, we've had college professors contacting us and sending their students to the film when it screens in their town, which I really didn't expect. Planned Parenthood has approached us, and they're using it for some of their special events because the film touts, body positivity and embracing yourself. And I think their belief is if you can't take control of your body if you don't love your body. So we're finding we have all these beautiful niche audiences with a very large, broad audience of just everybody else.
I think it's so great.
So it's been fun, yeah.
Thank you so much, Deidre, for coming down from Seattle to be with us.
You are quite welcome. It's a pleasure to be here.
And we'll be right back with artist John Buck and his sculptures on the set. Hi, I'm Joan Quinn, and welcome back to the Joan Quinn Profiles. Artist John Buck was born and raised in Iowa. He got his Bachelor of Fine Arts from Kansas City Art Institute, studied sculpture and painting at Skowhegan School in Maine, and went on to UC Davis for his Master's of Fine Arts. He's taught in schools in California, Ohio, Montana, Wisconsin, and Utah. John Buck's work has been shown in galleries across America as well as internationally. He's been the recipient of a long list of awards, grants, scholarships, not to mention several prestigious commissions. So how, as an artist, do you get a commission?
Well, that's a very good question. I'm not sure I can really be the best person to answer that, but my experience has been I submit slides to usually a committee, and the committee makes a decision about whether they would like me to make a proposal, and then from there they make a selection, usually among several finalists.
How do you know where to submit your slides?
Well, there are a lot of different avenues for that. There's even things on the internet about various searches that are being done.
So that's easier now, isn't it, than it was a few years ago?
Probably, although I don't get on the internet too much.
Schools or what, construction companies or...
For
who do
commissions,
you go to? Yeah.
Well, there are private individuals who do commissions, and most of the commissions that I have done are private.
I see.
I've done some that were for public, and most recently I'm working on a commission which is in Indiana, and it will be on a campus in a school.
Oh.
And they contacted me, they knew my work, and they wanted to have something that was like something I'd done.
So, like something, does that bother you?
Well,
or do you like
no,
to be creative?
because I was very happy to have the commission, and so it wasn't like I was going to work out my angst in a new way.
How big is it, and what is it?
It's a large globe that is called Omnibus. The original is a wooden piece that revolves, and it has all these different elements on the surface of it. It's kind of related to the wall pieces that I do, but it's in 3 dimensions.
And it will remain in wood, or will you cast it?
No, it will be cast in bronze. In fact, it's almost finished, and when I get back to Montana, I'm going to go to the foundry and I will finish that piece.
How do you cast a big? It's a big globe, right? How many pieces does it take?
Oh,
lots of pieces.
The globe itself is about 4 feet in diameter, and it takes probably 20 or 30 parts.
It does.
Cast separately and then welded together.
And are you there during that process, watching what's going on?
No, I'm not there to watch that ball being made, because.
Do they give you the whole ball already made, or are you
no,
there?
I have to
you're
make
there.
a wooden ball.
You make it first, yes.
And then they take a mold from that, and then they cast parts of it.
I see. Well, we're taking a lesson from you right now about how to do it, because you've taught at Humboldt State and Utah State and Montana State, different things. I think you taught ceramics someplace, did you?
Oh, I taught a summer session in Carlsbad, California, I think at the little Oceanside school there. That was a long time ago. And it was a very specific kind of class where we used primitive firing techniques.
But how did you know that? How did you know about ceramics?
Well, I had minored in ceramics at the Art Institute in Kansas City. And then I had always managed to keep my finger in all through my career.
I see. So at Humboldt State, what did you teach?
I taught sculpture.
Which is what you're most known for.
That's what I'm focusing on.
And Utah State?
Pardon?
Same thing at Utah State?
Well, Utah State was also another more workshop-like environment, and so I wasn't there on a permanent basis.
And Montana?
Montana State was probably my longest teaching part. I did that from 1976 to about 1986.
Painting or just wood or sculpture?
Well, I combine painting and sculpture. I use painting sometimes as a backdrop for a piece of sculpture. Like this one could be very nice if we're in front of a lake, you see. So I make a painting of a lake, and I mean that's kind of a joke, but
But it is the idea.
I do include backdrops with my sculptures sometimes.
I saw this fabulous photograph of you with a huge lathe, I guess. Is that what it is? Saw or something?
It was a bandsaw.
Oh, it was a saw.
A bandsaw uses a couple of wheels and a very long blade that travels around in a circle, and it's sort of like running a sewing machine. It's not very dangerous.
How high is it?
Well, the one I have was built in 1868.
You're kidding.
It's been restored, and it was one of the saws that made it possible for people to cut out the gingerbread that went on Victorian mansions in the old days.
Really?
That was the kind of thing that they did with that saw.
So how could they make it so minute? Are the
Oh,
blades
the
are minute?
The blade is really small. I use a 1/4-inch wide blade on this saw. It's huge, but it doesn't have to have a wide blade.
It's very tall,
Yes.
isn't it?
It's about 8 feet tall.
Well, and you're tall, but it looked ominous, and it looked, I don't know, kind of frightening. But now the way you explain it, has something of a really beautiful feel to it.
Oh, it is. It's a wonderful saw. It has a big table, so you can put a piece of wood in the center of it and just kind of move it
How
around.
did you find that?
I found it from a man who collected old equipment from the Butte mines in Montana.
Oh, you found it in Montana.
And it had been made in Cincinnati, but it had been brought out there to work in the mines. And once those mines closed down, a lot of this equipment went to the junk pile, and he saved it. And eventually, he sold it to me.
Do you use a lot of mechanical kind of tools in your business? In your business? In your workshop?
In my workshop, which is my business, I have the basic woodworking equipment. I don't use a lot of different kinds of things.
Oh, hello.
It's like an ad, isn't it?
Exactly. So you do you use electric saws and
all the equipment that I use are power saws.
They're all power,
like
whatever.
A standard table saw, bandsaw, drill press, that kind of thing.
They're kind of like weapons. Are they
It's not that bad. I do use a lot of chisels, and I have to say that I'm very proud of myself in the fact that I still have all my fingers.
Well,
And I use sharp things every day.
but that's what carpenters do. Do you feel like it's like kind of, I said work, but I was thinking commercial because of all the things you work with.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it is. I suppose I use a lot of carpentry tools that are like that's the type of equipment that you'd use to build a home.
Well, did you ever take carpentry classes?
No.
No.
My,
So these
my,
are...
Actually, my father was a carpenter, and I learned a lot of things from him as a son, and I would go into his shop and watch him work, and so I picked up a lot of basic things.
So that was really your inspiration. That's kind of in your background.
Yes, it is. And even my grandfather was a cabinet maker. So.
Oh, so you use wood. You use wood panels. You've made prints.
Mm-hmm. I
You
make
use
wood block prints.
Wood block prints. So you use a lot of that material, but you also use bronze.
Mm-hmm. It's a very easy thing
which
for
is
me
the
to go
commission,
from
right?
directly from wood to bronze. They take a mold off of it.
And that's it?
It looks exactly like
the bronze. What about the glass? You made some pieces of hand-blown glass.
Yes, I was invited to do a visiting artist residency at Pilchuck Glass School in north of Seattle.
Oh, yeah.
And it was based on a print that I'd done of a jar full of fireflies and a very interesting kind of background. But that was the central image, and that large glass jar was the reason they thought, well, maybe I had some interest in glass. And so I went up there, and I've been making these glass jars.
They're beautiful. Do you blow the glass?
Well, I had the opportunity to do it, but
You
really
learned it?
in order to really do it, you work with a number of people, and my abilities are pretty limited.
Are they all clear glass?
Yeah.
Or are they colored glass?
Well, I did do some early colored things, but...
And then the pieces inside, they're just beautiful. The pieces inside are pieces of wood. What kind of wood pieces?
Well, initially I started out making glass sculptures inside of the glass jars, but then I went to wood because I wasn't always in a place where I could get the facilities to make glass. So I made the wooden pieces to go in the jars.
Oh, I see. So do you hang out with other artists?
Not as much in Montana because it's, there are a few artists around that I know.
When you were at Davis, you had a great faculty. Do you still know those artists?
Well, probably my best friend over the years after getting out of graduate school is an artist whose name was Roy DeForest, and unfortunately he's died now. So I'm missing my very best friend, but
Roy DeForest was one of the people on the California Arts Council committees, art committees we used to have.
Oh,
and
sure.
he would judge some of the commissions we gave and different things. Fabulous artist.
Oh, he's a wonderful person, and he really befriended me early on, and so I'm very proud of the fact that I got to spend a lot of time with him. So, but there's a number of people on the faculty there that are all really great people. And, you know, I was lucky to be there at the time when all of those people were just hitting it big.
And they were all showing in galleries.
Mm-hmm. And as a graduate student, they'd invite you to town and say, hey, we're going to have an opening tonight in San Francisco. You want to come? Oh, sure. I was just this kid, you know. I'd just jump in my car and we'd roar down there. And, oh, it was wonderful.
So they were really mentors to you.
Oh, they were mentors, and they were so generous with their time.
That's great. Tell us a little bit about this beautiful piece, what it's made from, and what it is inspired by.
This is a piece that was cast in copper. It was kind of a difficult process, and it doesn't provide a real strong sculpture.
Copper?
Yeah, copper is a little weak. But at any rate, it was a little bit of an experiment. And then the figure itself is carved wood on a kind of a stump. And then the top is a reference to a folk art style of working with branches, which was used to make chairs and various pieces of furniture.
Back to wood.
It's kind of a whimsy, if you'd like to say.
And is this actually wood, or is it all cast?
No, this is cast copper.
The bottom was first made out of wood?
Mm-hmm. And then the top was made out of branches, and then they were invested and they were burned out directly.
Oh, they were?
And then the copper was poured into the mold where they had been.
So it's like wax, only
yes,
with wood?
it's like lost sticks instead of wax. And Debbie does this all the time.
Tell us about Debbie, Deborah Butterfield.
We're married, we have 2 sons, and we spend a lot of time together. She has been the person I've been married to for 30-some years, I guess.
So
I think we're working on 35.
So do you think your sons are going to follow in your footsteps?
Well, unfortunately, I think they will. Our youngest son is a student in Western Washington State, Bellingham, Washington.
Yeah.
He's studying printmaking and was just recently in Hawaii for a quarter where he had an extensive workshop there working with an artist whose name is Hiroki Morinoi. He's a master printer who studied in Japan.
So great, yeah.
And then Wilder Buck, who's our oldest son, is a student at Otis Art Institute, and he's working in video, which you know, I think he's really doing something with it. So we're very proud of our boys.
Well, we're glad that you were here. Thank you for telling us about your life.
Oh, thank you.
and keep writing to us. Email jaquinn1@aol.com and 777 South Figueroa, 44th floor, Los Angeles 90017. We'll see you next time.